I'm Doug Thompson. Welcome to this edition of Legislative Updates with John Barker of the Kansas House of Representatives for the 70th District. Most of us get our information concerning the actions of the Kansas legislature either from some form of media or after the fact, as the legislation either became law or died during the process. Representative John Barker has graciously agreed to take time from his schedule to update pending legislation as the bills are moving through committee to consideration by the House of Representatives. Right after this short break, let's talk with Representative John Barker concerning this week in the Kansas legislature. Welcome to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with my special guest, John Barker, representative from the 70th District. And John, we're just going to sort of hit the ground running because that's what you've done this past week or so. The legislature went back into session. Was it January the 8th?
All right, on Monday.
Yep, and then from there, tell me what happened on, well, let's begin with Monday. What'd you do Monday?
Of course, I went up Sunday night to get ready. Monday, we did not go into session until 2 p.m., but I was at the office about 7 and had appointments all day, a number of people coming in on different issues from bills that were left over last year. We went into session, didn't last very long, kind of did our reorganizational portion of it, and then we adjourned probably 30 minutes later, and then everybody goes back to their respective offices. I was getting an agenda ready for Federal and State Affairs, which I chair, on Tuesday morning, and getting bills introduced. I had a number of bills that were what we call pre-file. They were filed before session started.
For this session here or from
session.
Last session?
No, for this session here.
Okay.
And so I had to get those arranged with my secretaries when we're setting up hearings. Of course, we have bills left over from, this is a carryover year, we have bills from last year that did not get heard and may not get heard. So it was just mostly paperwork, getting the agendas out. I also, as you know, I chair the post audit. I knew I had a post audit on Thursday. I met with the post auditor, Scott Franks, and we worked out an agenda for yesterday. And so then we went in Tuesday. I had my first meeting with the Fed and State Committee, 23-member committee. It's one of the exempt committees. I kind of restated the rules of the committee, which they all have a copy of. Did some organization. I moved everybody around. I do that the second year. Not every committee chair does that, but I do it just because you get kind of complacent sitting beside the same two people, one on each side, and the committee likes that. And so I moved everybody around into new seats. We took, I kind of went through the agenda for the week, what we're going to be doing, and fairly short. I think we were in there 30, 45 minutes. Came out, and then, of course, 11 o'clock went in the chamber. Kind of did some formalities in the chamber. One of our members resigned, who was on Fed and State. He had just been appointed medical director for Kansas Health and, not Health and Human Services, Kansas Environment.
Okay.
Greg Lakin. He's a medical doctor and an attorney. And he was always
a little unusual.
He and I were good. He and I are good friends, and I'm glad to see that that he took that position. So we're waiting for the local committee in Wichita to appoint a successor to his, and that successor may come to Fed and State or may not. The speaker and I'll have to talk about that and see who we're going to get in, because I'm one short. But basically that. Then Wednesday, I'm on the health committee, and we had arranged for the health committee to go to KU Medical Center in Kansas City to the stem cell research. It's not embryos stem cells. This is adult. You can get stem cells from adults.
This is Children's Mercy?
No, this is at KU.
At KU.
At KU. So we went there and met the doctors who are in charge of that. I was impressed. One of them was a neurosurgeon who's doing some research through the federal government and Food and Drug Administration, where they're implanting stem cells from bone marrow into stroke victims.
Into the brain?
Into the brain.
Oh, wow.
And they think that there's some possibility that it will. And they've had some positive results, they think. But of course, the FDA needs to look at all of that. But they make a small hole through the skull, and they actually just shoot this stem cells into the brain, into the darker area of the brain, where they know the stroke has happened, and then they have some type of impairment.
It's amazing.
Amazing.
Does the state fund some of that too?
We do. We passed the bill. I was involved in it in 2013 to start this. Not that the state gives a lot of money, but it got the core group, enough money for the core group, and then they apply for grants from
Federal and foundations.
Federal grants and stuff. And then they've made some discoveries, and they've got 3 or 4 patents pending on their procedures, which could generate later on funds to keep it going. I found that the doctor that was in charge, of Dr. Dahl, that California did the same thing. They spent I think it was $2 billion on it. We have spent much less than that, and we're a little further along than they are.
A little further along. Wow. We're going to cut away and take a break. You're watching Legislative Updates with John Barker. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson. We're visiting with John Barker, representative from the 70th District. The legislature went back into session on January 8th, and John's bringing us up to date now, and we're talking about, you're on the Health Committee, of course, and that's tremendous, because you've just been to KU, and you were talking about the stem cell research.
Right, exactly.
And where do you want to go, or where did you go from there?
Well, we did our tour, we got our briefing. Then we loaded up and went over to Children's Mercy on the Missouri side, Children's Mercy Hospital, because Children's Mercy serves Kansas as well as western Missouri.
They're partnered up in some way with KU, aren't they?
In fact, the medical director is both the medical director at KU and the medical director at Children's Mercy, which helps in the collaboration.
Oh, I would think, yeah.
And we were just talking about, we went there to view, because state of Kansas does provide funds to them
for research primarily.
Well, mostly for care of children, small children. You know, that's all they do is children. If you turn 18, you're out of there. And of course, the number of children that they're serving, and serve all of Kansas. We went to the one floor that had all the premature babies. And it's just unbelievable. They had 40 on that floor. Everyone, of course, has a room with a small little crib, or what do you want to call it, their bed with so many needles going into them and different monitors.
Yeah.
But everyone has a nurse that never leaves them.
Wow.
Family members, of course, can be there.
It's like a guardian angel.
It is, and she's at the computer. She monitors everything. It was very impressive. I mean, the medical field is just coming up with so many new ideas, how to preserve life, how to give you quality of life. Yeah, and it is expensive.
Well, I'm sure that it is. But so it's a partnership between Kansas and Missouri?
They do. They serve all the children who have needs, small children with major medical needs that can't be treated at local hospitals.
So doctors are referring them there,
they
knowing
are.
that they're going to have a premature
Exactly,
child.
and they have one Learjet that will actually fly out.
Wow.
They have 2 helicopters, I think 13 or 15 ambulances, and these are the largest ambulances I've ever seen. And you go inside, and it's like having an operating room. I mean, they just do a wonderful job. It's money well spent, but I was just really interested in how these doctors they do this type of work and have a love for it, and the nurses have a love for it, and they do a tremendous job.
I'm sure that people are so appreciative of that fact that when you're faced with that situation where your local hospital says this is above what we can do, because here's going to be the problems. We're not set up for that, and I recommend Children's Mercy.
Right.
And away they go, and then
they'll
you get
come
into
and
that
get you.
setting. Yeah, and they will come and get you.
They
and
will
that
come and get you if
obviously
it's an
bring that
emergency.
Learjet or the helicopter.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
And,
that's awesome.
But that's the only area that they concentrate in is children's services, and they do they have all the small instruments that you need for a baby. It was just, it's very tedious work, and the folks that work there I was so impressed with.
Oh, they'd have to be so dedicated if you have one nurse sitting there watching the monitoring of that child to get through those stages that it needs to go, watching all of that take place to be certain that they give that child the best chance of survival.
Right.
Boy, that's tremendous.
It is.
I would think so. Now, I know on Tuesday night was the State of the State address, and that would have been Governor Brownback's last State of the State address.
Which I don't think he was wanting to make, because he hoped he had been in D.C. on his appointment as the ambassador, but his nomination got sent back and then resent by President Trump back to the Senate.
And am I right about this? Is the only thing I know about it, I guess, is what I read in the paper. But because a certain time went by or the year ended, then and no action taken on it, in order for him to be considered, he has to be renominated for that.
That is correct.
And the president did that.
Right. But there is not a need for a hearing at the Senate committee. They can actually just take a vote, and if they kick it out or pass it, then it goes to Senator McConnell, the majority leader, to then schedule it for a vote in the full Senate. Okay. And normally when they do that, they put them in bunk, or they will vote on 10 or 20 at a time. Because of course all general officers, if they get promoted from 1-star brigadier general to major general, that has to be approved by Congress.
There's just no debate about it, really.
No,
Yeah,
no.
they just summarily do it.
Right, and they do ambassadors and other positions that need Senate approval.
Okay, so would you anticipate then that Governor Sam will be appointed?
I think he will.
I guess it's called confirmed, isn't it?
Confirmed. Have to be a vote, and that's got to be confirmed by the Senate. There was no indication, he passed it out of committee, that he would not be confirmed. I think they just have a number of appointments, and of course 1 or 2 senators can put a hold on you in a confirmation, and they can't do it forever, but they can do it for a period of time. So I think that's probably what happened the last time, but I don't know that.
Well, when he was in committee before, it seems like to me it was like an 11-10 vote, and they went right on party lines.
Normally, yeah.
Is that right?
It'll be party line. You would think, because he has been a senator before, that he would it wouldn't be that way, but today partisan politics are pretty strong.
It is pretty strong.
So.
Okay, well, before we talk about that State of the State address, we're going to cut away and take a break here in just a minute. But was it a full house for that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, all right. Okay, we're going to cut away. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. You're watching Legislative Updates with John Barker. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with special guest John Barker. And John, just coming in, you're just finishing up the first week of the legislature being back in session. We talked on the other segments. We talked about the startup, and then your trip with the health committee to KU and off to Children's Mercy in Kansas City. Man, that's fantastic stories. And then we just started talking about the State of the State address because, of course, because the legislature just started back up. That was the headlines in the paper, and it was good and bad. And, a lot of, I don't know whether it was disappointment or not. What did you think of the address?
Well, I was a little surprised at certain points of it. I've watched the governor over the years. My first State of the State, well, I saw governors prior to that, but as a member of the legislature in 2013, it was a guy that was going to be leaving town. Was the way I liked Senator Brownback. I think he means well, and I've tried to support him when I can. I don't support him when I can't, but he brought up spending this additional $500 or $600 million on education. Not saying they don't need it. We don't know that yet. We've not had the studies. I meet with my local superintendents. So when he said, and then he said it's without a tax raise.
Hard to come up with $600 million from nowhere. I take it.
Yeah, we can't do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not possible. You know, in fact, if we did that, we would have to cut $300 million out of other funds, or cut across the board, you know, 15–18% without raising taxes. And I don't think there's a mood within the legislature after last year's big tax increase of $1.2 billion over 2 years that legislators want to do that. Their constituents are contacting them and says no more taxes. You know, and I think when we had Senator Denning was the majority leader in the Senate, you know, he was a little upset with the governor's speech. A number of other legislators have. The only people that really kind of liked it were some of the Democrats. And they liked it because they know that you can't do it. So they're going to probably hold the legislature and say, you know, this is what your governor wants. But to do it without a tax increase, another tax increase, just it's not possible. Unless you're going to cut all the Medicaid out, you're going to cut all the other things that we need to fund and required to fund completely out of the budget.
Well, both Republicans and Democrats running for office, when they go to explain their position, they're still going to have some explanation of how do you handle school finance, because that's been going on for years.
Right. Well, it's been going on for 25 years, I think, and I think that the governor did indicate that he would be supportive. He's tired of the litigation also. That he would support a constitutional amendment to change the word last time suitable.
Suitable.
What is suitable? What I think is suitable may not be what you. And it could be just tying it, you know, if we work something out, tying it to the state general fund, saying you're presently getting 63%. You know, we're going to lock in at a flat 60% because the state general fund, you know, if revenues are up, we get more each year. So they would be funded additionally, but not as much as they may want.
Yeah.
But you tie it at 60%. Some states do that.
Well, it would make sense because to just a moving target, like you said, the legislature is the one who formulates the amount that's due.
Right.
And so if there was a constitutional amendment that put a formula in place, then the Supreme Court doesn't have to guess either and say, well, here's what we think.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Define what suitable is.
Yeah.
And that's what we want.
Well, that's going to be an issue going on. But
It is.
on Thursday, you had something else going on Thursday night.
Of course, at 9 o'clock I did my post audit. Then at noontime, I did Fed and State at 9 o'clock. At noon, we had our post audit. And I tentatively approved as chairman an audit from Senator Hensley concerning the old Secretary of Commerce, where the senator had alleged some misconduct. And the process is I tentatively approve it as chairman, and then it comes on our agenda and we vote on it, because I can't just authorize on my own.
Okay.
I've got to have the consent of the committee. And Senator Lynn made a motion to not approve the audit, and she gave a very good explanation. She's chairman of Commerce on the Senate side, and she said all those contracts that he had entered into are now void. So it's not a continuing process. And I had indicated that, well, if there's criminal activity,
Or an allegation of
or
it.
an allegation of criminal activity, and I'm not saying there is or there isn't, and I think that was a quote in the Capitol Journal, is that post-audit is not the ones to do it. To make a referral, and I told Senator Hensley in committee, you need to write a letter to the Attorney General and ask him to do it, because he has forensic criminal investigators who can go in there. They understand how to proceed and how to preserve evidence, how to keep a chain of custody, so that if it would go to where criminal activity was found, that he could then prosecute the case. I did not want the post-audit to go in and possibly disturb the evidence in a manner which would not be admissible, which you understand.
Sure, yeah.
As in
Compromised.
court, compromise that evidence where it would not be admissible to court. And he did not like that. I think he accused us of sweeping it under the rug. Well, we didn't sweep it under the rug. He accused me of going back on my word. I said, didn't go back on my word. You know the procedure. I tentatively approve it, and then the committee has authority to overrule, and they did. So
Okay.
that's about it. And then, but the Capitol Journal did get most of it correct. They got my quotes correct, and because apparently he left early, the meeting early, and went out to the press, and I finished the meeting. In fact, I turned the reins over to the Senate, because this year the Senate will chair the post-audit. We alternate from year to year.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
it's been interesting.
Well, it sounds like it's off to a good start. We're going to cut away, take a break. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Legislative Updates. I'm your host, Doug Thompson, with John Barker, 70th District Representative. And John, we were just finishing up talking about Senator Hensley, and he was disappointed because you followed a procedure that you know that you have to for criminal investigations, if there is one.
Right, and he was unhappy, and he indicated that. But you know, Senator Hensley's been in the state legislature since the 1970s, 40 plus years.
It's a long time.
It's a long time, and he is probably, he is more political than I am. Nice guy. We've exchanged pictures of each other's grandchildren and stuff, and we've always gotten along, and we'll get along again.
Sure.
It's just one of those things. But you know, we got a number of things next week. We've got the State of the Judiciary. Chief Justice Ness will be on Wednesday giving his address to the joint legislature, and so we've got another full plate next week.
Well, we'll be excited to see what happens here this next week. And you stay tuned, because next week we'll have legislative updates and we'll track the progress of the legislature. Thanks for watching.